Right, you're live.
Oh, hello everyone. Good evening. Happy Monday. Thank you all for being here. Just so as you all know today is a public feedback session. July 4th, for our advisory committee. July 14th will now be our teacher and school leader accountability. So thank you for your flexibility. This will hopefully give more capacity for our blueprint coordinators, strategic facilitators, and other guests, more capacity to partake in our discussion because, well, with the summer coming and the end of the school year. But first off, let's get started with introductions. Um, we're gonna have our committee members and AIB staff introduce themselves. I'll go first. My name is Javon Slew. I'm a teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. I'll pass it on to Amy.
Hey everyone, I'm Amy Evan. I'm a Senior Research Associate and School Improvement Specialist with WestEd. And I'll pass it to Candace.
Hi, I'm Candace Savage, and I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Worcester County and Worcester County Government, and I'll pass it to Michael.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Brown. I am the proud principal of Wild Lake High School out here in Howard County Public Schools. And I will pass it over to Joy.
Hi, I'm Joy Schaefer. I'm the Government Relations Director at the AIB. And I think we have has Jake gone?
I'm here. My name's Jake. I work for Prince George's County Public Schools in the Office of Student Records, Transfers, and Archival Services.
Hi, I'm Heather Clayball. I am the Associate Superintendent of Fiscal Services for Frederick County Public Schools.
Did we get all committee members? Okay. Dr. Stapleton, could I pass it to you?
Sure. I am Laura Stapleton. I am a professor and chair of human development and quantitative methodology at the University of Maryland. I'm also a member of the Accountability and Implementation Board for just a few more weeks yet. My term is up on July 1st. So glad to be meeting with you all as one of my last duties.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and introduce the AIB staff members that are here tonight with us. I'm Rachel Amstutz, the policy director, and I'll pass it over to Joy.
Oh, so I introduced myself earlier, but I'll pass it over to Arshia.
Hi, everyone. Arshia Sethi Snowden, Outreach and Communications Director at the AIB.
All right, was that it for the introductions from our committee and AIB staff? Okay, awesome. So sorry, so again, like on behalf of the committee, I just want to thank everyone for joining us and participating in the public comment portion of our meeting. The majority of today's meeting is focused on collecting public feedback and recommendations concerning Pillar 5. The AIB will consider this input as they revise the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. So before we begin, the AIB staff will provide a brief overview of the process to update the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan, after which we will open the floor to take public comment. Now I believe I'll pass it on to Joy.
Great, thank you. So I'm sharing my screen and I see it. I hope everybody else does. Good afternoon, Chair Evan, Vice Chair Liu, and members of Pillar 5 Advisory Committee. Oops. Got a little ahead of myself there. Sorry about that. So the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan guides the work of the state and local agencies and the entities that are charged with implementing the blueprint. It sets out specific objectives for each of the 5 pillars of the blueprint, what specifically must be implemented to achieve those objectives, by what date they must be achieved, and then who holds the responsibility for each task. It's updated annually, and by statute, the requirement is that any updates must be adopted by August 1st. Since the initial comprehensive plan, which was adopted in December 2022, the AIB and state and local partners have experienced both successes, challenges, and learned a great deal. Changes to implementation requirements and guidance have been informed by insights that have been gained from these experiences, as well as through stakeholder and public feedback. Suggestions for updates to the comprehensive plan generally fall into two categories: changes that are allowed within the parameters of the comprehensive plan and are within the AIB's purview to change. And then there are suggestions that would affect components that are set forth in state law. These would require what we would term a statutory change and therefore necessitate legislation by the General Assembly. A key thing to keep in mind is that the comprehensive plan aligns to the achievement pillar by pillar of specific objectives that are articulated in the plan. So suggestions for updates must relate to those defined objectives. And specific to Pillar 5, governance and accountability, there are 4 objectives that are addressed in the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. The first is to support Blueprint implementation planning. The second is establish and deploy expert review teams. The third is coordinate Maryland's participation in the Program for International Student Assessment, the PISA. And the fourth is monitor Blueprint outcomes. So each year, the plan is updated to incorporate any changes in policy or the law that affect implementation. And this year, during the legislative session, House Bill 504 passed in the General Assembly and was signed by the governor. So the Excellence in Maryland Public Schools Act sets forth some changes to oversight and reporting relative to community schools and the career counseling program for middle and high school students. With regard to community schools, relative to the ability for local education agencies to expend community school funds on behalf of schools, the bill adds the requirement that those county boards allowed to distribute funds in this way must provide students and families of each school an itemized list of services along with the amount spent on each of those services and then the amount of funding spent on central administrative support services. The bill shifts the appeals process by which local systems may request this flexibility in fund distribution. It shifts it from the AIB to an appeals process that is established and administrated by MSDE. And regarding the annual reporting requirement that each community school coordinator must fulfill, the legislation removes the requirement that the community school coordinator submit the annual evaluation both to the AIB and MSDE. Now that requirement is to be, the evaluation is to be submitted to MSDE, and then MSDE would transmit a final report to the AIB. Additionally, the responsibility for making those annual evaluations publicly available now rests solely with MSDE rather than jointly with both the department and AIB. And then finally, MSDE must on or before December 1st, 2028, conduct a statewide evaluation of this program and transmit the final report to the AIB and make that report publicly available. With regard to career counseling, the bill extended the per pupil funding for the program beyond FY26 through to FY28. And this extends then the requirement through FY28 that the local workforce development boards and county boards report to the AIB each year on the use and impact of the funds. There's also now an additional requirement that the AIB report by January 2027 to the governor and the General Assembly on the effectiveness of the career counseling program, as well as whether students have received high quality career opportunities as a result of the program, and the identification of long-term metrics determining the program's effectiveness. In terms of policy changes, on March 20th, 2025, the AIB adopted the policy and process for submitting a waiver from funding requirements and released guidance for submitting these requests on March 31st. At its regular meeting on May 15th, the board considered revisions to this policy with regard to adjusting the submission deadline, as well as providing clarity for LEAs requesting waivers for more than one fiscal year. The board will take up this discussion again at its next regular meeting on June 26th, and a decision is anticipated at that time. Let's move to the next one. So as an overview of the timeline for the comprehensive plan update, feedback is gathered from public meetings like these, from state agencies and organizations, from written comments provided through our survey on the AIB website, which will be open through July 11. In order to meet the August 1st statutory deadline for updating the plan, the board will consider changes to the comprehensive plan at their regular meeting in July. That's July 24th. And then finally, in terms of public feedback opportunities, advisory committees are each holding these public comment sessions during June to gather feedback relevant to each pillar. Staff have reached out to state agencies, entities, and organizations to solicit feedback. And I mentioned earlier on the AIB website, there's a survey available for the submission of written comments. These opportunities have been communicated through a robust and systematic communication strategy. And that is, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think I went a minute over my time, so I'll go ahead and turn it back over, I guess, to either the chair or vice chair so we can get to the public comment portion of our meeting. But thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Before we move on, do any committee members have questions before we get to the public comment portion of our meeting? Okay, if not, then that last slide was a great segue to the public comment portion. I want to make sure that our speakers who are here providing public comment are aware that this meeting is being transcribed and recorded. We have 6 speakers lined up who would like to give comment. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. You'll see a countdown timer in the corner of your video. When your time is up, there will be an auditory alert. I ask that speakers respect this time allotment as a courtesy to others who are waiting to speak. We will do our best to facilitate this meeting so we ensure we have ample time to hear from everyone. I will announce the speakers in order in groups of 3 or so you have a little bit of a heads up that you're on deck. If you ever played baseball, you might be the runner on deck. Staff are also dropping the speaker list and order in the chat. You can keep track of where you are in the order and be ready to give comment when your turn is up. We also have time set aside at today's meeting for the advisory committee members who would like to also provide public comment. And we ask a speaker to clarify their comments. It's important that we fully understand each speaker's input. Let's keep in mind the speakers who are still waiting to give comment, and since have time in the agenda for our own discussion, we should focus on getting clarity for a specific point or suggestion. For those participating today, when you are called on to provide your comment, please enable your camera and staff will unmute your microphone. If you're watching this live stream on another device, kindly mute that device before you start speaking. That will avoid the feedback and any distracting background noise. For viewers, as staff mentioned earlier, if you did not sign up to give comment today, you can still provide input through written comments. There's a link to the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan survey on the homepage of AIB's website, which is aib.maryland.gov. That survey form will remain open for written feedback through Friday, July 11th. Do committee members have questions about the public comment process?
Mr. Lutz?
Yeah, not a question, but just wanted to flag the question. Not sure if it got lost in the chat. Someone asked if was it 3 minutes? They were told 3 minutes. But it was said 2 minutes. Could you clarify the timing for each public comment speaker?
Thanks, Lou.
Well, sure. We're gonna broadly try to aim for three. Three will be fine tonight. We're good with the number of speakers that we have that we can get everybody in. So you're good with three.
Thank you. All right, without further ado, let's hear from the participants. Our first three speakers in order are, and I apologize if I butcher your name, I don't mean to, John Silky, which I think will be read by Javon Zlu, Dr. Takemia Dorsey, and Liz Zogby. Lou, are you ready with Mr. Silky's testimony?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Amy. So this public comment is on behalf of John Seelke. He unfortunately had a change in his schedule and could no longer attend the meeting tonight, so I'll just be reading this on behalf of him. Good morning. My name is Dr. John Seelke. I am currently a middle school mathematics teacher in Montgomery County, but I've been involved with many aspects of the blueprint, including the expert review teams. I began my work with the review team when it initially began, and this year concluded my third year as an ERT. Due to scheduling conflicts with the summer training, I will be teaching summer school in July when all the training sessions are held. I sadly will not be able to continue into next year. That said, I have asked for the chance to at least serve as a substitute, but have not yet heard back yet. When the blueprint began, the work of the ERT appeared to be visionary, having objective observers visit a school, see positive trends, as well as offer some feedback. Yet, 3 years into the work, from my perspective, the vision of the ERT has been quite far from its reality. Some of this has been due to the changing expectations for the ERT, such as moving from seeing all classes to just literacy and mathematics, and shifting from all schools to only elementary schools. Yet, there are other logistical components that concern me about the effectiveness of the ERT in the upcoming years. Additionally, budget constraints on the ERT, where the funding per hour has already been cut from $72 to $45, may lead some current reviewers to not pursue an ERT position next year. Below are a few recommendations on changes to the ERT program that could make it more effective in impacting all schools across Maryland. 1. Hire experts in their fields to conduct the visits. Many of my visits focused on math have contained personnel that are not math experts. As a math teacher, I have had to sometimes help sway my colleagues on understanding the meanings of some of the terms within the rubric, such as what modeling means in mathematics. I had 3 colleagues apply for ERT review positions, all with math backgrounds, who were told they were not needed. If training others will be cost prohibitive, then consider having each visit have a subject expert who can help observers understand the meanings behind the rubrics. These 2 moves can help make the findings more reliable. 2. Related to hiring more staff, the number of reviews requested increased dramatically from 3 reviews per reviewer to 6. In some cases, school administrators on these visits. As a classroom teacher, I know having so many reviews can impact my own students in the classroom, perhaps limiting the time out of the classroom so that students at schools where reviewers work were not as impacted by teachers or staff leaving. 3. Consider pods for where reviewers will review to cut down on costs related to hotels and mileage. Currently, any reviewer can visit anywhere. I have had reviews as far north as Cecil County, where I had to have my hotel and mileage paid for. Understandably, a reviewer should not review the county in which they work for. However, having a radius where people can review may make the program more cost efficient. 4. Either increase the staff for the ERT or hire consultants to assist with the process. It is unfair to have the expert review team consist of a team of 4 to 5 people. While errors have happened during our reviews, for example, a survey was not loaded onto the technology, so parents and students could not take the survey, it is unfair to pin all of the responsibility on the staff that is overworked. 5. Finally, the turnaround of the reports needs to lessen. This is also related to the staffing issue in item 4. These reports should be useful for schools in changing their work as well as sharing strong ideas. It is unclear for now how they are currently being used or how they will be used. Any initiative begins with aspirations and then often faces reality. I believe in the power of the ERT. However, I am concerned that if the current trends continue, that the ERT will not end up doing what it ideally was supposed to do. I welcome the chance to communicate with any members of the Pillar 5 Advisory Committee. I can be reached at jseelke@gmail.com or 240-468-8274. Thank you, Dr. John L. Seelke.
Thanks so much, Mr. Liu, for reading that testimony. Dr. Dorsey is not present, so our next speaker will be, oh, actually, she's just joining. But while she joins, Liz, if you are ready to go, let's have you go, and then we can have Dr. Dorsey go after.
Very good. Thanks. Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Liz Ogby, and I'm here on behalf of the Education Advocacy Coalition, 50 organizations and individuals that are concerned with education policy for students with disabilities in Maryland. I also served as co-chair with Dr. Wright of the Blueprint Special Education Work Group that recently submitted its final recommendations to the AIB. Our Pillar 5 feedback focuses on the critical role of the AIB in advancing the work group's recommendations. One of the Blueprint's goals is closing proficiency gaps between students with and without disabilities while raising achievement for all. This will require greater gains for students with disabilities than for non-disabled students. Centering students with disabilities and prioritizing the instruction, services, and supports that will accelerate their progress will benefit all students. Without that explicit attention, students with disabilities will be left even further behind, and the Blueprint's goals will be in jeopardy. We've submitted our suggested revisions in writing, but here are a few points. 1, state and local implementation plans must include how the state will develop and LEAs will use standards, guidance, technical assistance, and coaching in evidence-based best practices for students with disabilities, and how this work will extend beyond the silo of special education. Almost 3/4 of Maryland students with disabilities spend at least 80% of the day in general education classrooms, and all students with disabilities, regardless of placement, must have meaningful access to and make progress in the general education content standards. 2, the work group identified areas for support and technical assistance, including teacher retention strategies, creating sustainable workloads, time for teacher collaboration, staffing and service delivery models, identification and eligibility determinations, and behavioral support. 3, expert review teams should include individuals with expertise in best practices for students with disabilities, and their work should include attention to significant disproportionality, placement in the least restrictive environment, proficiency gaps, and schools as communities of belonging. Next, we continue to have serious concerns about the use of PISA to benchmark progress for Blueprint implementation, given its very high exclusion rate. It was 6.1% in the United States in 2022. We need outcome measures with targets related specifically to students with disabilities. And finally, the AIB is charged with monitoring the use of special education funding. The special education cost study that was recommended by the work group and included in legislation that passed last session is critical. The comprehensive implementation plan should indicate that the study must establish a baseline of how current funding is being used, what funding is needed to enable students to reach grade level standards using evidence-based best practices, and what special education funding model and levels of funding are needed to achieve this goal. Thanks so much.
Perfect timing, Liz.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Liz. So next, we will be going to Mary Pat Fannin. And just a reminder to the speakers that we forgot to mention earlier, when you give comment, if you don't mind telling us your name, and if you are commenting on behalf of an organization, please tell us the organization you are representing.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Pat Fannin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Public School Superintendents Association of Maryland, or PSAM. I want to express the strong support of Maryland's 24 local superintendents for the Blueprint and our deep appreciation for the partnership with AIB and the MSDE. Thank you as well for your service on this committee, and best of luck to you, Dr. Stapleton. Tonight, I'll briefly highlight 4 recommendations with written comments to follow. 1, restructuring the expert review teams. 2, allowing aggregate reporting for minimum school funding. 3, advocating for sufficient foundation funding. And 4, improving administrative procedures for transparency and implementation. Expert review teams. While we've seen small improvements, these visits remain burdensome to principals and staff and are not delivering meaningful feedback. Reports are inconsistent and often delayed by 5 to 6 months, sometimes into the next school year. For the time and effort invested, the value to student achievement is very minimal. Minimal school funding reporting. One of the Blueprint's foundational principles is that funding follows the student. We urge the AIB to support legislation allowing the 8 Blueprint categories to be reported in aggregate by school rather than individually. This maintains the intent of the law, but significantly reduces administrative burden without sacrificing accountability or benefiting students. We appreciate the joint MSDE AIB flexibility to date, but more time is needed to implement this thoughtfully. Foundation funding. We ask the AIB to use its influence to communicate to the governor and the General Assembly that the foundation program, the base of the funding formula, is no longer adequate. The original model could not have accounted for the impacts of COVID and inflation. The current per pupil amount is not enough to meet the basic needs of students without additional weights, let alone fund safe, well-run schools. Lastly, administrative procedures. We support implementation. We recommend the plan to support implementation, we recommend the plan include clear policies that prevent last-minute reporting requirements, ensure advance notice and usable templates. We appreciate the 4-month commitment that has already been made, and align policy development with COMAR, including public review and proper review timelines. Finally, we ask that the AIB meeting agendas be published at least 1 week in advance so that stakeholders have time to respond meaningfully. Thank you for your time and continued partnership.
Thanks so much, Mary Pat. We will go next to Katie Ridgway.
Hello, my name is Katie Ridgway, and I serve as Chief of Staff of Harford County Public Schools. I'm here to advocate for your active support in improving the Blueprint. No one supports its goals more than the district leaders charged with implementation. And with that responsibility, we have a clear view of where the Blueprint's contours don't quite fit and where thoughtful adjustments can help us achieve our shared goals. When providing feedback to the AIB, it can feel like suggested changes are treated as heretical, but true fidelity requires a governance approach that embraces refinement and continuous improvement, not rigidity. For example, the AIB has acknowledged that transportation is not included in the foundation formula. As such, addressing such critical gaps must be part of Pillar 5 governance. We simply can't implement what hasn't been funded. Special education is another clear example. The AIB has budget data on all 24 districts related to special education, so the challenge is widely known. Though it falls under Pillar 4, it impacts every pillar and should be treated as a governance priority. When funding doesn't match reality, it threatens the entire Blueprint vision. We believe it is critical for all to understand special ed resource allocation, which is why we utilize the AIB's technical assistance through Project Evident in this area. We welcome a conversation about its legislative implications and the benefit of replicating this work statewide. As you look ahead, please consider that legislative text is not canon of biblical proportions. It can and should be adapted as a way to support the Blueprint and not to attack it. Please find ways to incorporate local context in your plans, decisions, and advocacy. The Blueprint can be a system that evolves to meet our needs, so please consider supporting that evolution. Please be responsive when known challenges abound, such as the foundation formula, special education, and beyond. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie. And then last but not least, we will have Rhea.
Good evening, members of the Pillar 5 Advisory Committee. Thank you for the chance to speak. My name is Ria Gupta. I am the Interim Executive Director of Strong Schools Maryland, a statewide organization focused on the full funding and faithful implementation of the blueprint. I want to focus my comments on 3 larger recommendations to sharpen Pillar 5's focus on true governance and accountability. First, the public outreach and feedback responsibilities assigned to the AIB in subtasks 547A and 515G are simply too vague. An outreach campaign shouldn't be a box to check. It is the crux of this work, and it should be developed in partnerships with communities, using multilingual materials and offer concrete, visible benefits to students, parents, and teachers. Outreach should create a feedback loop that leads to real change. At Strong Schools Maryland, we recently released a blueprint survey. While over 300 respondents said that they were very familiar with the blueprint, many still expressed large concerns about increased testing or larger class sizes associated with the blueprint. Many respondents also told us that they don't feel informed or lack language support to truly engage with the blueprint. The AIB's responsibility to solicit feedback needs to go beyond public comment. It must be comprehensive and include multiple strategies to reach communities that aren't engaged with, like regular community forums and multilingual surveys. Tied to stakeholder engagement, the AIB must ensure transparency and timelines to build public trust. Tasks 541C and 542E promise data dashboards and financial systems, but set no internal launch date or update schedules. Information that is untimely, is hard to navigate, or exists only in English won't build public trust. These tools need clear go live dates, user-friendly designs, multilingual access, and a public interactive status and impact dashboard. Third, the plan's language and evaluation metrics need to better focus on students and impact. Tasks like 523B and 545B are evaluation tasks, but they currently reflect a deficit mindset very largely and must go beyond academic performance as the sole measure of success. Equity-driven metrics like school climate, belonging, growth measures, and student voice surveys are essential to truly understand how the blueprint is affecting students and whether it is truly meeting their needs. Pillar 5 must model the accountability it promises. Meaningful engagement, self-accountable timelines, and student-focused impact evaluations is how we can build the blueprint to be a real tool for change.
Thanks, Ria. And now I will hand it back. I think that was all of our comments. Dr. Dorsey was just here to listen. But then I will hand it back to Chair Evan to see if there are any, if there are any clarifying questions from the committee for any of our public commenters.
I want to open it up to any clarifying comments from the committee members. I think we also set aside time if committee members also wanted to give comment. They can do so. Go ahead, Jake.
Awesome. So I did want to mention that I support a lot of what was said about the expert review teams. As somebody who's been a member of the expert review team since the beginning, there are real concerns about, is this whole thing kind of pointless? And I don't think I'm alone in that. From the conversations I have at every expert review team visit, of which I've done nearly 20 at this point, we all have this conversation as a group at the collective, at the schools we go to, and just goes, somebody's taking it a little more seriously than the others. We go, but why? It's really not that serious. Like, nothing comes of this. The reports never show up in a meaningful amount of time, and all of our recommendations and all the recommendations provided are very generic and not particularly helpful. It's the same thing any reasonable person with a teaching background would come to in a given school. But even the small snapshot you see within a 1 or 2 day visit is really hard to make an overarching explanation of, places where they should improve. And it's not an indictment on Dr. Cage and her team. They're doing an incredible job for the 4 or 5 of them that are in that office. It's just a huge unwieldy thing. And I just think a lot of the members and the schools apparently as well feel that it's not very clear what it's doing. And I think I expressed some of these concerns, but I do want to reiterate that I know our first speaker, and we've worked with him before, and he's not alone in thinking that.
Thanks, Jake. Heather, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to provide my own comment in regards to some of the comments that were made regarding aggregate funding and reporting requirements. At FCPS, when we look at our schools in aggregate, approximately 91% of them meet the 5-234 requirement of 75% of minimum school funding. But when you look at it by the various funding programs, we don't. And it's unfortunate because I think the funding formula and those funding programs in the report that we're required to submit don't look at the nuances and intricacy of funding or what it means to be in the various student groups. For example, our ML student groups, there are very different levels of requirements that are needed. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model. And it is also requires not simply an ML teacher, but there's co-teaching. So a teacher who would be coded to your foundation also has some portion of ML, special ed, or comprehensive education in their daily work because of the student populations that they serve. And so it becomes more of an accounting exercise than a resource exercise. And we as the CFOs had looked at the various reports that we have, and they're not all financial reports, but we have the systems have well over 250 reports they have to file annually for the various tracking data. So we would really love if we wouldn't continue to get reports added on top, but look at how we can, as a system or as part of the blueprint, as part of MSDE, as part of AIB, look to consolidate reporting because we have very limited staffs. When you look at a county the size of Frederick County, which has nearly 49,000 students and has a budget, when you add all of our funds together, well over $1 billion, we have 3 people in our budget office, and they attend to the entire budget from operating to capital and everything else included. So I think there's an opportunity to actually speak with the CFOs. I think it would be helpful if the AIB and even this committee had the opportunity to get a report or a presentation from CFOs from the various counties, because we have counties that have 160 schools and we have counties that have 8 schools, and they're required to do the same type of reporting. So it could be an individual or a very small team or a larger team. And so I just think there's an opportunity to have a more in-depth conversation with the people who are doing the groundwork every day and really want to support the work of the AIB, of MSDE, and try to work collaboratively to ensure that we do what's best for our students and be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And one more thing, Frederick County is the only county, or is the county in Maryland that is growing the fastest. After COVID, we've grown in the last 5 years, by nearly 10%. The next closest county has grown by about 2%. And funding lags. So you were always funded on the previous year's enrollment, and you have to plan for the next year's enrollment. And when you're growing by 700 students, approximately a year, which is about the size of one of our elementary schools, it makes it very difficult to meet a lot of these goals because you're simply trying to ensure you have the, your standard general education teachers available because you've been growing so much. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Any other committee members have comment or questions from any of our folks who joined us to provide public comment? Well, thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for sharing your thoughtful comments and suggestions. Your perspectives are valuable and essential to both the process of updating the comprehensive plan and ultimately in strengthening the blueprint implementation. I'd like to turn it to Rachel to provide some closing information to our meeting today.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. So we really would like to take a minute to thank our chair, Amy Evans, and our vice chair, Mr. Luz, for helping us get today facilitated and to be able to hear from everybody. In terms of the next steps, we will continue to be gathering input through mid-July. So people will have the opportunity to provide public comment for specific pillars. There's still, this is only our second one, so we still have pillars 2, 3, and 4 remaining. And you also, as you've heard today, can gather the information about the upcoming sessions and how to leave public comment in written form for us on our website at aib@maryland.gov. As mentioned earlier, there is also an online survey that can be used to submit those written suggestions, and that will be open until July 11th. The board will definitely be considering all comments received in all of the public hearing sessions, as well as anything submitted in writing. And the board will be able to reflect on those on our July 24th meeting in order to adapt any changes by the statutory deadline of August 1st. Let's see. We noticed in planning today's session that there would be kind of a natural opportunity here to connect back to our prior session that we had. I've kind of lost track of months, but I think it might have been in April, related to this topic about progress monitoring. So we do have our implementation plan director, Emma Pellerin, here today to be able to share some information, just letting you know where we've come since we last talked and what's coming. So we wanted to shift to that update before we close out.
Hi, Rachel, and everyone. Thanks for having me here tonight. Just wanted to provide, as Rachel said, a brief update on this work since the last time that we met to discuss the overall evaluation of the blueprint and progress monitoring in general. We are continuing to work with with NORC at the University of Chicago, who are completing the interim evaluation of the blueprint, and will be providing further updates about the evaluation plan. And they have also really been doing a lot of that work now in terms of phase 1 for developing their evaluation plan. In addition, we are, as part of the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan updates and, just in terms of continuous progress monitoring and looking at pieces of information or metrics that are critical to Blueprint implementation progress, we're continuing to identify leading indicators of progress related to Blueprint implementation and working to set, where appropriate, targets for those metrics, as well as working on reporting mechanisms and tools for sharing data related to those metrics. In particular, this is going to be helpful for our work with meeting with LEAs and working with LEAs to evaluate progress and discuss progress related to their blueprint implementation plans moving forward. And we are working on dashboards that will capture data related to those key metrics that will I know that there were some questions about dashboards and some feedback related to that. So we are working on things like that and are excited to provide those updates when those are live. They are not currently, but we will provide those when they are available. And just in addition to identifying those leading indicators, if there are any other metrics that we are identifying potential overlaps with other agencies, with any overlapping metrics that the State Department is looking at, or other entities, we are continuing to identify those areas of alignment as well on an ongoing basis. So those are some of the key pieces of updates that I just wanted to share. Are there any questions related to those, or anything else that somebody wanted to raise or wanted to provide some feedback on, or had any questions about? I'd be happy to answer that or provide more information. And if you do have questions, this for the committee, you're able to unmute yourselves now that the public comment session is over. But Emma, I do have a question about the leading indicators that you mentioned. Is there a timeline? We always want to know what information is being collected and when is it going to be shared. But do you have an idea of when an initial is NORC going to share what those leading indicators are, or is there a timeline as to when data collection will begin and when reports will be made publicly available? I mean, I think that for some of these, data is already being collected for some of these leading indicators. We are still trying to determine potential data sources or data tools for some metrics, but there is baseline data, for leading indicators related to, for instance, national board achievement and teachers pursuing national board certification, things like that. MCAP data, there is this data that is already being collected for some of these leading indicators of progress. And in terms of timelines for that, we do have baseline data for some. In terms of identifying baseline data, for metrics where there is no baseline data currently, that can take a long time if you need to actually develop a data collection tool in some cases, or in other cases add it to an existing tool. So it could just be part of future data collection activities, and it's harder to put a timeline on those because those can take a while to actually collect that baseline data. But it's not a matter of we need to collect all new data for all of these. In many cases, that's overlapping metrics, and we do have baseline data like the aligned metrics that have been adopted by both AIB and the state board. There is baseline data for those that have already been adopted for many of those. Thanks, Emma. Any other questions or comments from the committee? As a middle school teacher, I got great wait time.
I was going to celebrate your wait time. Yeah, you don't stress at all. I just want to check in on the agenda for tonight. Is there another agenda item today, or I think we might have merged two into one. Are we good?
I think we were under the impression that this meeting was just public comment.
Yes, we wanted to make sure that no other topics pertaining to feedback for the BCP were on your minds to be able to provide to the AIB today. All right.
don't think so. But Lou, we are slated to, can you give us, I know you introduced it in the very beginning, but can you just remind us again what the July meeting topic is going to be?
Yeah, so July 14th meeting will be the teacher and school leader accountability. Again, just want to, I guess apologize because I know we had scheduled originally for our May meeting, but unfortunately that had to be canceled. And I do know the blueprint coordinators and strategic facilitators, other guests that we were trying to get to the meeting. I guess, it's a busy time of year and the school year. So we're really hoping that for the next meeting in July on the topic that we'll be able to have those guests join us and to partake in our discussions.
And again, if there are meeting topics that are of interest to you, I know there were a couple great ideas that came up from the committee members today, just sharing ideas, like perhaps even getting the CFOs together. Please be sure to sign up. We have a topics list. I'm going to put that link in the chat now. But it is in our Pillar 5 folder where we do all of our planning and agenda setting, etc. So by all means, please let us know if there are topics that are of interest and or folks that you'd like to hear from. And if that is all, then I think we can close the meeting for tonight.
Thank you very much for everybody for carving out time to be here and for both taking the public comment and participating and sharing your thoughts and clarifying ideas as well. We appreciate it, and stay tuned for the July meetings to see what's about to what comes from all of the public comment sessions. And we'll be in touch about getting the July meeting going and have put out another plea for more guests to see if we've got some takers that are able to join us in July. Yes, May was a crazy time. But great. Thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you, Dr. Stapleton. We're going to miss you. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.